Welcome to our Living Stones podcast, where we gather to discuss all matters of faith and life as members of God's household. In a world that often leaves us feeling fragmented and disconnected, our hope is that Living Stones will help to further connect us as we pursue the Lord together. I'm your host, Davina, and in today's podcast, we have our very own members, Josh and Caroline Strunk. They have been attending our church for how long now?
We started coming out in the fall of 2020.
What year is it? Three. That's right, yeah.
Because we became members in April of 2024. So I guess like a year and a half, maybe.
Official members for about a year. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. I feel like you guys came like yesterday for some reason. So Joshua and Caroline are with us today to share their story of how they met, just their story of marriage and children. And I just feel like this is a unique opportunity to not just hear their grace story, but of a couple coming together and how things worked out with them. And I have personally gotten to know them, and I feel like Caroline is I've actually told Pastor Paul this. I said, Caroline is the artist, the dreamer, the creative mind, and Josh is the builder. And so this partnership is just so sweet to me. It kind of reminds me of me and Saints Up, but I feel like you guys are like on like a larger scale.
Oh, oh no.
No, not at all.
You summed me up pretty well, but there's a lot more going on her side, I'm sure.
No.
You know?
And maybe it's because you guys are together for longer. So like this feng shui you guys have created is, it's been so sweet to witness in like the little bit that I have. So welcome.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having us here today.
Yeah. Okay. So where and how did you meet and when?
So Josh and I went to high school together, but we were not quite high school sweethearts. The story of how we met, we have a joke that the very first day that I met Josh, I actually got into his pants. And I can say that because it's actually very wholesome. It's very PG. I don't want anyone getting heartburn listening to this. But so what had happened was, we went to the same high school together, and we were both part of this pretty nerdy club.
FBLA, yep.
Future Business Leaders.
FBLA.
I don't even think it exists anymore. But we were both there, and it was at a conference center in Reston, so it was an overnight trip. And, I had packed at the very last minute, so I had like my suit, my work clothes, but I didn't have any clothes to sleep in. And so I decided that I was going to ask the cleanest, also cutest guy that I could find for just like a t-shirt and some shorts to sleep in. And so that was Josh. And so I went over and I knocked on his door and asked if I could borrow some shorts. And he produced a pair of bright yellow basketball shorts. So
you
literally got in the pants.
Yes. Yeah, I was a soccer player, so I couldn't stay that night at the conference. And so I happened to have an extra pair of, athletic shorts. And yeah.
And so I just had to track him down later to return them. And
I remember going to your locker, right? Yeah, I don't remember what I said at all. It probably something really dumb because I was very nervous, opening up the locker and just trying to get a conversation.
Which is going to lead me to my next question. What was your impression? I mean, I feel like from the start, Josh.
Yeah, what's my first impression? I think I would definitely be lying if I didn't mention that she was exceptionally attractive, right? We'll just use PG terms, right? She's cute, attractive, but well put together. But I think there was always something more about her, right? Her confidence, her aura. And that really it stuck with me.
Wait, how old were you?
Oh, that's great. So we said high school. High school for us, this was probably 2002, 2003. So at that time,
I think you were 16 and I was 15 because Josh is a year older.
Yeah.
That's how you thought at 16?
Well, so this probably actually will speak to kind of why I think we gravitated towards each other is that I think this was not my first impression because I didn't really know him very well or just know him at all. But, we ended up, I think, being drawn to each other because we were both old souls. Yes, but with Josh, so I had seen him around. And so, to be very honest, I also thought he was really cute. I know that there are some couples whose stories are beautiful and that like it takes them a while to get to know each other and grow on each other. For me, I kind of sparked right away. I was very drawn to him. And I think that even as a 16-year-old, Josh radiated this sort of like soul deep goodness. Like if you speak Korean, like, you seem very 착해. And a very
Mm.
quiet confidence that I found compelling. He just mentioned that he was a soccer player. He's also like a star tennis player. And so the fact that he had a quiet confidence and he wasn't somebody who was very showy about it was very appealing to me.
Yeah, just to kind of build off that, the old souls has kind of always been part of us, but there was a whole conversation we had on AIM. If anyone remembers AIM, AOL Instant Messenger.
You might have to describe that
Oh
for.
gosh, how do you describe that? Do they have anything like messages? A chat program on the internet when the internet was sort of new?
AOL,
AOL.
America Online, is that what it was? Oh my
Yeah, America Online.
Yeah.
But I think so. If people really don't know what AIM is, it was like the first chat where you would actually have to be sitting at your computer because at this time like tablets, phones with screens like wasn't really a thing, and so you would have to open up this chat program, be sitting at your probably desktop, and you would have these screen names and. You would just sit there and chat with each other like sitting down and texting, but in real time.
Yeah, well, that conversation stuck with me for a long time, and I think it really cemented my kind of view on her as being someone very different, and the depth of how she kind of saw through me through the series of masks that we have in our early angsty period, and how her mind worked, and that, I mean, even to this day, it was just startling. I don't know all the different words that could be used for it, but yeah, that conversation was exceptionally deep and came from a deep mind somewhere, right?
And that
So.
was the initial conversation.
That was one of our well, we were chatting, but that was the first for me, real conversation, I think, right?
Yeah.
I guess you guys just had a connection pretty immediately.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
chemistry, I mean, clearly the physical attraction, but the old soul, as you were mentioning. What was your faith life like in high school?
It's a great question. So I think what was interesting is, Josh and I were talking a little bit about some questions beforehand. And one of the things that he mentioned in response to this question was that there was a little bit of irony, like in our beginnings, because, apart from that initial attraction, I think that we came from very opposite backgrounds and we were very different people in a lot of ways. And faith, I think, is definitely one of those areas where we had very different backgrounds.
Yeah, I guess if there was anything, in my upbringing, my dad did a lot of mentoring for me. So just growing up, from him being Catholic to converting to Protestant and his studies. But one thing he always did for me was explain things like opposites attract and pray for my future wife. So my dad was praying for Caroline before ever meeting for Caroline
Wow.
with me for my future wife, right? So there were a lot of those things that probably stuck with me in ways that I didn't know. And in the moment, the opposites attract was probably something that I really latched onto because I had an opposite person, right? I was exceptionally attracted to. But what that really meant and the depth of that would come later throughout our marriage on what that really means, right? That's kind of the irony of the Bible. So yeah, I don't know providential or not, but my upbringing was, yeah.
For me, so like Josh was saying, he came from a very strong, Christian background where there was a lot of intentional discipling and everything like that. For me, so I did also grow up in the Korean church community, but I think it was a very different experience. So, for context, my father, who was, he's a first generation Korean immigrant, was, very moody, volatile presence in our home. And so, even though he proclaimed himself a Christian, there was really nothing about this like very human father who made God our Father believable. And to be honest, he wasn't really alone in this. I think that there were a lot of Korean churchgoers at the time who really wore their faith like this cloak of self-righteousness. Or they would invoke like the biblical language around submission to substantiate their secular or Korean cultural views around dominance, authority, duty, obedience, often for personal gain. And so the way this played out in my family, my parents did divorce when I was, I guess, in middle school, around 12 years old, maybe. But for me, I spent a lot of my younger years, even probably honestly through college, actively distancing myself from Christianity or what I thought it was.
Based on what you're saying, Caroline, like, and then knowing a little of Josh's background, there was like some clashing there, maybe.
Not as much as you would think. So Josh, what I really appreciated about him is that he never kind of shoved religion down my throat. I think it was clear that it was going to be something that he never compromised on. I don't think he was ever going to really marry a non-believer when it came down to it. But for me, like he slowly sort of led me in by really modeling what living a gospel centered life looked like. He really just built that trust over time. And so at some point when he did ask if I wanted to come to church with him,
Mm-hmm.
I said yes. And so when we became members at the church at Cornerstone back in April, as you know, I think Pastor Paul asked us to come up with like our testimony and share it. And for me, that was probably the first time that I really stopped and thought about how, you know, God's invisible hand guided me and how he really healed a lot of these deeper heart wounds using Josh as a messenger. And so our relationship actually probably does play the biggest part in my personal testimony and faith journey.
Wow. What, I guess, solidified? What made you guys know that this was the one?
Oh boy. Yeah. What was the one? That's always the big question. I mean, I feel like it came from that very first conversation, but um, when I think about how do I know it's the one, I guess, I make it a joke or not, but every time I see her, it's it's like a whole new light that's been shining, right? It's glowing around, and so um, I don't know. I think when you're, and I don't want to say that, having met a bunch of other, either people or give some, insinuation around that. Because my dad always promoted, have a lot of friends, but understand what dating's purpose is for. And so dating purpose is for, being married, that's a unification with a partner for life, right? And so it's easier for me to answer because it's Caroline. She's just so different, right? She's different. She's amazing. She's got all these check marks. So at that moment, I'm like, man, I've got like the trophy wife of like everything, right? Go through the list. And so, if I try to bring my mind back into my, pre-developed brain, that's probably the top of my list. Plus, her character traits. I think Pastor Jacob gave the sermon on Mother's Day on Proverbs 31. And she literally go through those, and that's her checkbox. She
No,
professed,
you're
whether
giving
she
me way too
professed
much
as not
credit.
being, religious or having, faith in her background, that was at her core. And so, by having, the clouds break open and the light shining on her, I don't think she saw that, but something perhaps in me really saw that,
Yeah.
and whether I knew it or not. Yeah.
Wait, can I also ask? So when I do ask this question to other married couples that I meet, another question I have is, did you like know right away? Or was it kind of this developing sense?
Probably both for me. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, there was no period in which I had this like list of, pros and cons, do I not like, which was unusual because because what I just shared about my family history and background, I was never a marriage-minded person. I really honestly didn't think that I would marry. And so it was very unusual when, within probably, I don't know, months of seriously dating Josh, I told my friends, I was like, I'm gonna marry this one. And I think I just knew in my bones that it
Oh,
was
so
going
you
to be
knew.
him.
Wow.
Yeah.
But if I had to, I guess, really think about why that was and why that clicked so easily. So I think that when we are young, we met during these like angsty teenage years, right? I think it's very easy to bond with people who understand and accept the worst of you, your darker side. And often it might be because they are also right there with it, with you. They relate to those struggles and qualities firsthand. And that's great. But I think Josh was someone who didn't just understand the worst of me, but he deliberately brought out the best in me. And I think that being with someone who inspires you to be better, not because they're telling you to be better, but because they are leading by example, it just kind of makes you want to stick around and learn more.
Yeah.
Well, that's flattering. Yeah. I don't know if I did that so well to start with, but hopefully I'm doing a better job. I'm hoping every day.
As you age, yeah.
Yeah.
With life.
I mean, we had a very rocky start. So for me, when I say the journey, I think at first there was the conversation, and I can go on and on about describing how amazing she is, but I had made a lot of errors in judgment, and she is also a woman of grace, and I think the combination of those in that journey solidified it very strongly for me. So I think it was the combination of both.
Wow. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because my next question would be, while you were dating, when you were together, before marriage, what were some obstacles that you guys faced, or some challenges?
So well, yeah, we can go ahead. But so for everyone, Caroline graduated from UVA during that time, and I was at Mason. So we were distant, but distance wasn't necessarily the challenge.
I think in our earlier dating years, I brought more of the challenges or was a more challenging one. So let's see, how to summarize this. Um, so, again, when we met, we were teenagers, right? We were not quite adults with big angsty emotions, a near pathological conviction in the correctness of our own views, and a destructive capacity for pride and stubbornness. And so, as you can imagine, we had a lot of fights. And some were serious, many were stupid, but all of them ended the same way. And that was with me really just withdrawing and hiding behind this veil of cold indifference. Um, and so where I'm going with this is that I think one of the biggest challenges, and it's a challenge that also followed us into the early years of marriage and took us a while to work through, was really my inability and or unwillingness to be vulnerable. I think I had a pretty avoidant attachment style, and again, this stems a lot from childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if I can share a little bit of context or history here, and so, as a child, because my father, he was a first generation Korean American who had a lot of his own unresolved trauma that he didn't work through. And so, that anger could often turn into something that was very volatile and dangerous in our household. And so, as a child, the only defense that I could really summon against a father who seemed to make a sport out of provoking me or my mother into like a negative reaction, right? It's like 10 points for visible discomfort, 50 points for an angry outburst, or jackpot, right? If you made me cry and then got to play the bonus round of mocking my weakness. And I'm sure a lot of, people in our generation can empathize with this. And so I found my own way of winning that game. And so that was basically just to not show a reaction at all or show him that, he could get to me. And so by this point, there was really no amount of antagonism that I couldn't handle from someone that I didn't respect or care about. And so I was so ill equipped to process feelings like, hurt and jealousy and insecurity and sadness in a relationship with someone that I loved. And so, you could say that I wore a lot of armor into our relationship and made it very hard for Josh, when conflicts did come up.
Yeah. Yeah. Immovable object, unstoppable force. That's if I
Well,
could
so
sum
that's
that up.
actually not true, though. Um, so a big part of, I think, what I alluded to before with like my testimony or grace story and how Josh was a big part of that healing in our relationship is that, growing up in a Korean American community, I had never really seen conflict handled in a healthy way,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think that affection seemed either conditional or transactional. And so whenever we would fight, I would sort of think like, okay, I guess we're done now. And I would pull away. And so I was very surprised genuinely when Josh would refuse to give up on us and he would hold us together. And so even when Josh knew that he wasn't at fault, he was always the first to let go, the first to apologize, and the
Yeah.
first to yield. So he wasn't really this immovable object.
Hmm.
And so at the time, I mean, he was really strong enough, to pay that price and clear my kind of emotional debt. And I was receiving grace, but I didn't see it that way at the time. And if I'm being honest, it's probably because I felt entitled to it. I needed to feel justified in my victory or my correctness so that I didn't have to sit in this like guilt or shame if I really held myself accountable. And so as far as challenges go, I mean, I think that it was probably very exhausting and isolating for Josh to, carry that burden.
Yeah. Yeah. This
That's a-
this Josh person sounds amazing, but Honey will try to do all those things. Yeah, I don't know. It was also scary, I guess. It's because it's different from how maybe my upbringing or my dad's. There's no avoidance. We want to solve whatever the conflict is and resolve it. Don't go to sleep angry type of thing. So early on in the marriage, there were a few words of wisdom, and that was probably one of them. You want to resolve it. So yeah, that's been a process.
And I'm sure many of us married people know too how our upbringings really come into play with how I guess we react to things, how we take things. So can you share an example of, I guess, an instance of a challenge? Doesn't have to be specific, but like an instance in how the conflict would come about and then how you guys would resolve that, or I guess like the growing pains of that.
I mean, honestly, so I think that both Josh and I, I think that in this season of our lives, like we've been able to channel this stubbornness in a healthier way. But, we were stubborn and we were very prideful, which means that a lot of our conflicts stem from, me thinking one way or having some opinion or conviction and thinking that I was right.
Mm-hmm.
Joshua would disagree. And I think that's sort of where a lot of the conflict would come from. And honestly, it could be about the dumbest thing. I feel so bad for our college roommates. Like I'm sure they have, unintentionally been forced to eavesdrop on just some really ridiculous arguments that we had.
I mean, there were a lot of opposing viewpoints that we had, right?
Mhm.
I'm you want to say right wing or more conservative, and you were were on more the left wing and liberal side. We had at that early time of our lives, more feminist versus my side of the house, right? So it's like, oh, guys can do things that women can't do, and that would be one of those buttons that you never push on early
Mhm.
on in our dating period, right?
Right.
But we didn't know better, so I did,
Right.
and that would never go well, right? Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, there was I think a lot of those type of topics would,
Yeah. But I guess if I'm speaking to, couples who are dating right now and maybe encountering some of these challenges,
mhm,
I think the pattern, like this like destructive dance that we would do is like something would happen, like there would be this event, and then one or both of us would start kind of attaching this story to it,
mhm,
right? Like about, if he thinks this, then he must feel this way, or he, disrespects me, he doesn't appreciate who I am, he doesn't, and it would turn into this whole spiral of things that were probably untrue, but then I would act as if they were true. And so I
Mm-hmm.
would withdraw, shut down, really just kind of withhold warmth and affection. I think that's really what the cold indifference look like. Josh, I think you
that
said
sounds
it
unnatural.
did sound unnatural. But I think at some point you described it as if when we would fight, I would like turn off a switch,
Yeah.
like the love switch, and it's just like I didn't love you anymore.
Yeah, those
Um,
are scary, dark times. It's like if going to hell is being absent from God, it was like, oh, she just turned off a switch and everything went into this dark abyss. I mean, for me,
Mm.
it was, and maybe it's because my love language or something, but that was very scary when that would happen.
mhm,
Yeah, yeah. So understanding that about each other probably took a while to do. And in
mhm,
our early dating periods, we didn't invest into really understanding the differences. I feel, well, not you probably had a better idea, but I didn't know the difference in personality. So I brought a lot of assumptions. I'm
Mm-hmm.
right versus wrong. This is the way. There is no other way,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that probably could have really helped us out early on in our dating period is to understand the differences and not just appreciate it, but really understand it, right?
mhm.
So,
And this is where I think your faith-based background really made a difference in ways that I didn't appreciate until much later. Is that like I think that without God, without a higher purpose, and being able to plug into like that grace,
mhm,
I think that you probably would have been like, this, I'm done with this a long time ago. And so when I would shut down, pull away, and turn off that switch, instead of being like, well, okay, I'm done here too, he would keep pursuing, even though I didn't make it easy for him. And it was just, I think that dance over and
mhm.
over that just made me realize like that's what
Yeah.
choosing each other and
Yeah. I think that's a big part of that. From my family, from my dad and my mom, and bringing me up and teaching me that constant pursuit, right, of the Old Testament pursuit, literally, God and the Israelites. So I mean that had to be relentless if you wanted something like marriage to work.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a foundation that was rooted in me, and that wasn't anything I did. That was, if you want to say providential, that was God.
Right.
So
The grace of
yeah.
God, for sure.
hmm
So when I think of dating couples now, or even, people that have dated, I think of uh, like if they were to break up or if they're thinking of breaking up because the fights are bad or there's so much miscommunication. I mean, clearly you guys have been through a whole set of that.
hmm
Caroline, you were just saying how ultimately Josh was the one that just kind of remained steadfast and kept pursuing, right? But I guess like I'm just asking for some insight in what you think or how you think dating couples should view conflict and constant conflict.
hmm that's a great question. Maybe this is like an even teaser for a future episode.
Oh yeah, that's right. Your episode's next.
hmm I mean, I think that to a certain degree, conflict in a relationship is pretty
It is
normal.
constant, right?
It's normal, and like sometimes it can even be healthy, right? Because I think that when you have two people with like different backgrounds, different upbringings, different views, different values, I mean, there's going to be some friction. And I think that if there's conflict, it means that at least someone tried to talk about it, which is better than the alternative, which is sweeping it under a rug and never talking about it. But I think that when the conflict is constant, I think that typically it means that people haven't really figured out how to communicate. Because you can talk about different viewpoints and work through issues in a way that's healthy, where things are not escalating or turning ugly, or where people are shutting down. But it is very much like a skill that has to be learned. And I think a lot of us in our generation are tasked with being like the cycle breakers, and we're having to learn this stuff for the first time. So it doesn't come naturally.
Yeah, it's an imperial, right? Like Darth Vader type lie. There is no conflict. Right? I mean, there's always conflict, and conflict doesn't have to be bad, in my opinion. Matter of fact, a lot of those, the arguments, those low times, those are times where we come out of it stronger,
Yeah.
right? And I think it's also something that maybe whether you're dating or early on, and no matter your season of life, I think we should always be grateful that we have someone on the other side that is there willing to criticize us, right? In the positive way, hopefully. And the important part is knowing that we're partners in it together, and both people really have to come to that realization, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it looks like you're attacking each other, and
Right.
I think that is really important, whether in dating, relationship, in our lives, right?
Yeah. I was talking about this, I feel like just a couple days ago, and I was sharing, I think it was with another one of our members, Erica. I said that Sanksab and I are also very different, like complete opposites. Even the way that we, I guess, do conflict. I am an over communicator and he is the silent, like just processor, and it takes some time. And so that can be really frustrating. But I think what has made Sanksab and I work so well over the years, even through conflict, is that we're always willing to engage. Even through the differences of who's right, who's wrong, how angry we are. As you were saying, that concept of partners. We're partners and we're committed to each other. And so even if you make no sense right now, we will continue engaging. And so I like that answer. It makes sense.
I like your answer.
Thanks. So when did you officially get married and where?
2010, October 9th. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 15, almost, 15?
Almost 15. Yeah. Yeah. We're a few months away.
Yeah, it was the fall of 2010, and we got married at Brookside Gardens in Maryland, so it was an outdoor wedding.
How has marriage, I guess starting from that first year, if you can even remember from 15 years ago, how has it refined you, like in the beginning stages of marriage?
Yeah. The first the first early time period of us being married, I mean, we're very different people at that point in time, right? I would say, speaking for myself, right? I was task oriented, right? I gotta hit these goals. We got married. We were paying for the wedding. We gotta find a house like going through the list and just sprinting. I was just sprinting and sprinting to every next milestone, everything that, I'm quote unquote supposed to do. And I think early on in the marriage, I continued that, but I didn't continue that in a way where she, like, I really communicated that's either how I was or what I was doing. I just assumed she was along with me where I'm sprinting. And that created a whole lot of different conflicts.
Yeah.
Obviously financial conflicts, challenges, where are we going? Where are we going to go together? So the first several years, I would say that, at least from my view, I contributed quite a lot to.
Well, I think that the first few years of marriage, or dating leading into marriage, a lot of that is recalibrating. And it's not even necessarily like a bad thing, because I think that some of what you're talking about, right, being goal oriented, being productive, being very hardworking. I mean, obviously these are incredible traits, and some of the traits that made me attracted to Josh in the first place. But I think that, there's not a single positive quality that doesn't have like a potential dark side. And so if you almost imagine like a slider, like a spectrum, I mean, you kind of want to aim for like a healthy balance somewhere in there. And so I think that at times, what you're describing as being goal oriented felt like, there was never time to stop and appreciate the journey and just kind of like be in the present moment. And so I think that was us kind of learning how to communicate that to each other and find a
Well,
balance.
well, you did that exceptionally well, and I think that's what I was also attracted to. But when we got married, it was like, well, forget that. We have goals to do, and I know what we need to do, and we're going to need to do it, right?
Mhm.
And that was false. That was not right. And I think what you just said took years to realize.
Mhm.
If I would have realized, I guess in an analogy, putting time, when God created me, right? Maybe when he's, made in his image, I feel like he's like, oh, here's a line. That's a nice line, right? And it went down. But what is the line, right? It's efficient and effective. You point in a direction, there it goes, right? Right? You don't need to add anything more to it. And then when he created, Caroline, right? He turned the lights on the stars. He spun the galaxy around, put a star in the middle, and let the strobe lights go. He let the tectonic plates move, so he had some bass rumbling, and he started his work. And then he's like, "Oh, I think that line needs some help." Now, if I would have realized it earlier, what that means, she's help, my help, and to put us together into something more full. Oh man, I think it would have been a much different first few years.
Mhm.
But I appreciate the journey because now, I mean, we're at the peak and climbing. So
Right. Because I don't think that we could be where we are today without a lot of those earlier lessons. I mean, like, do we wish that we could go back and reclaim some of those moments and like get a redo? I mean, sure. I think that it never feels good to sit in the knowledge that you have caused someone that you love, pain at some point
Mm-hmm.
in the past. But I think it very much was a journey that we both needed to be on. For me, the changing and the refining, I think that marriage really has been like the main space, or I guess we could even say like battleground for sanctification. Because I mean, truly, I think that for a lot of us, marriage is like the mirror that reflects back our own selfishness. And so I think for me, like in that domain of marriage, Josh has been a really great spiritual leader. And I can probably trace back, sort of every pivotal moment of spiritual growth to something that he shared with me. And I think that's something that really changed me in terms of how I showed up in marriage specifically, was just kind of the way that I came to understand that biblical concept of submission,
Mm-hmm.
right? Something that I was reflecting on when I was thinking about my testimony is that, like, if somebody had told me, like, when I was a child, like, hey, it's going to be a man that comes along and like sanctifies you, I would have laughed. I mean, I just
Yeah.
think that it's very ironic. But here we are. Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
I remember when one of your friends got married, we were sitting in the audience, and they were doing like the reading, and the reading was that verse, the passage about submission.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember turning to Josh and looking at him and whispering, if you try to get us to read this during our wedding, we're not getting married. And I think it really just kind of shows you like how I truly just didn't understand, even at that point, right?
Mm.
Professing to be a Christian, what that really meant. So that's been a really big, I think, just point of transformation for me.
Yeah.
but I mean, you give me way too much credit. Um, the way that you've expressed like grace for me throughout my stubbornness, my just rigidity. I would have been a much lesser man if there was anyone else, and I probably would have ruined another woman's life, right? So I mean, what you've exhibited in my life has made us blossom, and then I just try my best to, if you want to say, live out, what is it, Ephesians 5, right? Love, I don't know how it goes, I'm going to butcher it, so I'm sorry for whoever's listening over there, but loving your wife as Christ loved the church, right? And what
Yeah.
did he do in sacrifice?
Mhm.
And so I think by your grace made me, well, the grace of God, but by you exhibiting that made me realize what that really meant, right? And that's kind of been, yeah, how well, sacrifice. I don't know. It's not a bad thing anymore,
Goals. You guys are just so kind to each other, and it's just so like, I don't know, it's a blessing for me to be on this side. I can tell that, I mean, for sure, arguments, conflict, that all arises, but the fact that 15 years later you can be talking about it in this way and having so much gratitude for each other, it's such a blessing. And again, goals, and hopefully an encouragement to everyone listening, to know that 15 years later it can be like this.
Yeah, and better 15 years later, right? but I do. It's not without conflict, and we already said that. But like even the other day, I don't know if it's okay to share.
Which one?
Before we went to promote the.
Oh, this is a great example of like one of our more recent conflicts. Did you want to tell the story or should I?
I love hearing you, but I'll just say before we went to just do the announcement for the home builders
Marriage
conference.
Uh-huh.
We're like, well, how are we going to prepare? What are you going to say? And Caroline does everything perfectly, and I do things a little bit chaotically sometimes. And we're just different ways of approaching it. So we had an argument, to put it bluntly, before getting to present about this marriage conference.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so it's not without conflict, and there's stuff you may want to fill in the blank there, but yeah, and it was actually better in the long run, I think, the outcome of that, how we handle it. So.
No. Yeah, no, I feel like that was a great example of just kind of like all the little lessons we have learned along the way and like, just showing grace and communication and things like that. So to set the stage a little bit, in the days leading up to the Home Builders Marriage Conference, Chaplain Joshua had reached out because they were going to be out of town to be like, hey, maybe we can do like a special announcement to get some more people to sign up. And so we were like, sure, we can do it. And so, with 3 kids, our lives are pretty busy and fast paced. And so we hadn't really had a chance to prepare anything. And so it's the morning of, and I'm thinking, I don't really want to wing this. And so I'm going to get up early and like prepare a little script for us and then just basically give it to Josh and we'll read it. And so, it's pretty early. It's before church. Josh wanders downstairs to see like, what I'm doing. And I'm like, hey, read this. And so for context here, Josh is not a morning person. He had literally just rolled out of bed. There was no coffee. And I'm asking him to say a lot of big words very quickly. But then, I can see him sort of like twitch a little bit, but he takes a breath and then he reads it with me. But after he reads it, I can tell immediately from the look on his face that he's not happy with the situation. And so for me, again, this is kind of, I think, what we were talking about before, about how our upbringing really just shapes how we show up in relationships and how we respond. And so when I saw that look of disapproval, I instantly started to shut down a little bit because it felt like, oh, he's mad at me or he's not happy with this. And so I started getting defensive and I, asked him, okay, like I can tell that you don't like this, what's wrong with it? We still have some time to fix it. And so Josh, thinking like, we don't have time to fix it. And so he goes, it's fine. But his face is saying it's not fine. And I can clearly see it. So I keep prodding at him to be like, listen, I want you to feel good about what you're saying. Tell me what's not fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't even really know how it progressed, but the car ride there and then that moment, it's like, well, clearly it's not fine. I'm like, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. And yeah.
Right. And so maybe this is a whole different conversation for the future, but this is sort of where the storytelling happens, where I'm thinking like, I'm trying to do us a favor by waking up and putting together this script and like, he's not appreciative and he's being critical and all of this. And so, it just goes to show that like, even after coming to a place where we absolutely believe the best in each other, we absolutely don't believe that we're acting from a place of malice. He has good intentions. Hurt feelings come up, right? But I think one thing that's really changed for us that we've refined over time is the repair. It's kind of like, okay, so the conflict happens, but then afterwards, how do you come back together? How do you repair what was hurt? How do you continue to demonstrate that, like,
how do you get on stage and promote a marriage conference with a straight face,
with a smile on your face?
Yeah.
Wear a shirt that says what? Marriage is hard, crossed out work, right? So,
and it says worth it.
Worth it. Yeah. Well, I mean, we prayed.
Yeah. Well, to be more specific, Josh reached over as we got there and we were praying, and he, leaned over and he grabbed my hands and he prayed together with me. And
yeah, I mean, who's right or wrong doesn't really matter. I think owning up to any percent of it that you own 100% of it, and in that moment, let's acknowledge it. Pray to be a better husband. I even started crying. I don't really cry. I don't know why I started like tearing up during that prayer, but I think just offering up to God, right, in that moment was huge. So Yeah, those conflict. It's probably gonna happen again, but
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I think we all had a shared similar experience. So at the Home Builders marriage conference, which happened this weekend, I think that there was a very emotional moment for a lot of us towards the end where, the speaker had us turn towards each other
Mhm.
and kind of offer this, this prayer of confession in a way where we are saying to our partners while holding them and, looking them in the eyes, like, we're sorry in a way. Like, you deserve better. I commit to being a better husband or a better wife. And I think in that moment, it just like in that vulnerability and intimate setting, just the guilt or even like the shame and the truth, I think, of how we haven't shown up as our best selves for the person that we love the most hits you really hard.
Mhm.
Um, and it was really funny because in that sermon, I don't know if you recall or not, but Pastor Paul was talking about like a lot of like the acts of service that go unacknowledged, and he was calling out like, do you know the person
Mm.
who drives like the van, like, do you know the person who does this, do you know the person who's like substituting for the person who does this, and I was kind of thinking like, yeah, like, we want to acknowledge the efforts of people, and then in the very next sentence he goes like, you do not serve or act for the approval of man, so it's sort of like sanctification for you
Yeah.
and for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Pastor Paul mentioned in today's sermon how he was tearing up
Yeah.
Hmm.
towards that last part. Man, I should have gone. I'll go next year.
Yeah, next time.
Yeah, next time. Um, so moving forward now, because I feel like we spent so much time on your. I'm just curious about you too. So if things come up, it's okay. Uh, how many years into marriage did you get pregnant with your first?
How have we not talked about children this
Yeah,
whole
we
time?
haven't
That's
talked
the
about kids
longest.
yet.
Oh
Yeah.
goodness. Yeah, so we were married in October of 2010, and Chloe was born December of 2011.
Oh, so you became parents pretty immediately.
Yeah, we were young, and it was pretty quick. Yeah.
We had some very enthusiastic grandparents
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
ready to become grandparents.
Awesome. And then let's go down the line. How many kids do you have? What are their names, ages?
Yeah.
So we have three, girl, boy, girl. Our oldest, Chloe, we have an official teenager. She's 13 years old. Our middle child, Noah, he is 10. And our littlest one, Olivia, is 6.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I've met them. They're so cute. How has parenthood shaped you, especially when it comes to marriage?
Hmm. Well, so like a lot of people, when I came to my faith, like I came from a place of brokenness, which only made me, I guess you could say, like a reluctant believer. Like, I believe, but almost because I feel like I have to, and because I need to. And I don't think it was really until I became a mother that my heart really just shifted into this posture of complete and joyful surrender. Um, God continued to work through Josh to teach me what it was to be truly known and loved. And that was healing in a way that I'll never really be able to fully put into words. But I think that becoming a mom really sent this like wrecking ball through what was left of my walls, and I learned what it meant to truly love unconditionally.
Mm.
I think that becoming a mother is probably the most beautiful and terrifying privilege I have ever known. Because, I mean, really, like nothing shifts your priorities, your perspectives, your identity as abruptly or decisively as parenthood. And it was very startling to discover these like depths of fear and love that, I didn't know could exist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many things to say about how children shape your life. Um, oh boy. I mean, I always wanted kids. Well, maybe that was a little bit different, right? I love kids. I love holding little babies and taking care of them. But when they're born, you don't really realize what you're responsible for
Mm.
until you have them, right? So, I'd say one thing that was surprising for me was how much my kids encouraged me to be a better um, father, an image bearer.
Mm-hmm.
I think of Chloe and Noah and of course now Olivia. But there was a letter that I remember Chloe wrote about, or it was a school note, said that, Daddy encourages me. I think that was
Hmm.
one of her examples, and it really touched me. And I thought, she really encourages me and tries to make me want to work harder and do better, right? So I'd say that was pretty surprising. We have these little disciples that we're responsible for, and
Mm-hmm.
as much as I pour into them, I feel like that they're also, allowing the opportunity for them to pour into us has been also very important too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I said earlier that one of the things that I found so compelling about Josh is how he really just leads by example. And I really thought that that couldn't become more amplified until I saw him become a father. And the way that he really just lives out the values and models the values that he holds closest to his heart has been so just truly inspirational to me. I mean, so as an example, he recently ran a 50 miler race. So
What do you call that?
5-0. It's an ultra marathon. And so people like, when we're like, oh yeah, he's training for like a 50 miler, they would be like 50K or maybe even assume that, I said 15 because the thought of running that many some people don't even like driving 50 miles, right? It's just incomprehensible. And I know that one of the things that really drives Josh is this grit. It's to really show the kids, what it means to persevere, to draw strength for something that's greater than yourself. And so,
Yeah, I'm just looking at there's a lot to be said about the kids and being with them and how at least we've tried, both of us in our own ways, to demonstrate sacrificial love for them, but also to teach them grit, integrity, and all these other values. So and she says that the 50 miler, while she wears a Marine Corps, is that the Marine Corps marathon shirt, so she's a multi Marine Corps marathoner
Yeah, I remember
as
you guys
well.
shared that you guys like to run.
Like, I don't know
Oh,
about
I mean, passionate, like ultra passionate.
check boxes for me.
50 miles, like from beginning to end, you just ran the whole time.
sun up to sundown.
Yeah, I don't define running, but it was all in one go. Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah, I'm still in pain.
How long ago was this?
April 5th.
Oh, not that long ago. Last month.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Like the whole family supported. Like that is a journey that required the whole family to really get behind me on one of the major milestones of this year. So it wasn't just, she gives me a lot of credit. But I was just a conduit to achieve that. But really, the family was the one who really made that possible.
Yeah.
So.
How has having children changed? I guess changed in a good way, but also challenged the relationship between you two. I know this is a side question. I just thought of it. I want to know.
Yeah. I think that we're in a different season of our lives and parenting now, but I think that in those early years, that was probably where some of like our biggest, messiest conflicts came from. I think that at the time, it's just, nothing really prepares you for becoming a mom. I mean, even if you're someone, again, like Josh, like who was looking forward to this and like you chose this and planned for this, I think especially for the woman, like becoming a mom is one of the most identity shattering things that, a woman can experience, right? Your whole world just revolves around taking care of this tiny human with a lot of needs. And especially if you're doing things like breastfeeding, even your body doesn't really belong to you at that point. And I think it's hard sometimes to really feel like you're sharing the load with your partner. I mean, Josh is a wonderful father. He's like super present as a partner. But even then, I just felt like, and I think a lot of women do, just carrying a lot of like the emotional, mental load of parenting alone. And I think that's a space where a lot of resentment and frustration can build.
Yeah, that season was pretty hard because we were also very young. I mean, our friends didn't have kids, right? It's just a different season for the lives around us. The community, we didn't really have. I mean, we have parents that are close by, but the community wasn't there, and it was really, really tough. And I probably selfishly, like a child, internalized a lot of the challenges she was having. Like she was attacking me or something. So I wasn't really listening. I might be going through the motions, going through like, oh, what I can do this that could be helpful, or I'm doing this, or take the kids out to give her time, or whatever it is. But I really wasn't listening, to it, and I was really internalizing it, and that created its own spiral. So that season, which was early in our financial challenges, earlier in our marriage, and then kind of in the middle portion of it as well. That was pretty tough.
Man,
really
we might
tough.
actually have to have another episode with you guys because I know that especially with our church friends, there's a lot of young parents, and this is where conflict is. It's actually very encouraging to hear too from you two that you guys aren't just the perfect couple. You guys had a really
Oh
hard
yeah.
time when you
Certainly
first
Yeah, I
not.
test
know.
when
Certainly
you first
not.
had kids. But I feel like this is also where the marriage can, for sure. There's a lot of grace in the beginning. But all of you are surviving, but it can, also, like, create bad habits,
Mm-hmm.
for one another,
Mhm.
and so maybe I can pick your brain on that later. But
Mhm.
no, I'm glad you guys struggled and that you're here today.
Yeah.
It's possible. Yeah,
Definitely.
15 years later, it's great.
Yeah. And I think this is again like where we as Christians have an advantage that people who are not believers don't.
Mm-hmm.
Is that there's an expression like we can go vertical, right? I think that in a relationship, when your husband or your wife is the person that like you see, feel, just are with every single day, I think it becomes really easy to sort of pin everything on them, whether it's like your happiness, it's your fulfillment, whether or not you feel supported, whether this person's meeting your needs, and I think sometimes that puts a lot of unfair burden and pressure on our partner. Like it's not on them to fulfill our purpose or make us happy. So I think there's that piece to it. Um, but it's a lot easier said than done because I think that was something that we really, really struggled with where if I felt invalidated or if I felt like Josh didn't recognize my sacrifices, like this is where like the selfishness comes out. There's a lot of like the me, like, why don't you see what I'm doing, what I've done, what I've sacrificed? And I think, Josh is over there telling himself the same story with a different, set of
Mm-hmm.
circumstances. Right. And I think that when we become so fixated on our own personal, challenges and struggles, we don't make space to kind of see and understand and pursue our partner.
Yeah.
Yeah. We feed our me monsters, our spouses, which is a horrible thought. It's
Well, you
sad.
have a crying baby that's surviving off of you.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
How did you come about coming to our church, and what, I guess, made your decision to commit to this one?
Our kids?
Yeah.
I think that's
That's
the
a good
biggest part.
answer, and I hear that a lot too.
And for us, it actually literally started with our kids because, our kids went to school with other children just kind of in like our community. And so we got connected with the parents and got pretty close. And they, knew that we were looking for a church and mentioned, oh, we go to this church. Like, why don't you come out one day and try it? And so we did. And it felt right at the time. The whole Goldilocks and like the Three Bears, where
Yeah.
it's just like, this one is too hard. Oh gosh, I'm mixing up my
Yeah.
Too
stories,
hot.
but it's like too hot, too big,
cold,
something. But
just right.
basically, it was like that. Where I think that when we were moving through different churches, like there were some churches that were very that they just really aggressively emphasized law over grace, right? And I think that they showed a lot of contempt for people who had different belief systems, different lifestyles. And I mean, I think it's one thing to say, this is biblically just not true. We don't support this, but to show contempt and not even allow people from these communities an opportunity to try to, feel safe in this environment and like get to know God. It rubbed me the wrong way. And I think there were other churches that were on the opposite end of the spectrum where they were very selective in their messaging as well, but in ways that were just very condoning or enabling of like secular views that were not based in
Wow,
biblical
sounds
truth.
like Goldilocks. Yeah,
Yeah.
like one on the other extreme.
Too hard, too soft. And so when we came to this church, I really love that Pastor Paul and also Pastor Jacob and Pastor Sheung, they were teaching biblical truth with this like unrelenting integrity, but I think they were also challenging us to know and share God's grace with equal passion.
Yeah, there's a lot of intelligent design in the whole thing that you can't really ignore. Between the Goldilocks situation, the friends that we knew, and then even arriving at church, and I was having some shoulder pains, and then I feel this really firm hand on my back giving me a massage while in the middle of service, and I turn and it was Sonic. And I've known him since I was 5 years old. He was one of my groomsmen, right?
Was that one of the connections in how you came to our church?
No. Well, I think he mentioned it a
Oh.
long time ago when we were trying to establish, our home church, but it didn't work out timing-wise. So it was just happenstance, right?
Okay, but Sonic was
Sonic, and then there were other members in the church that we kind of ran into. And so there was all of that culminating together, plus the messaging. And I think one of the sermons was it Pastor Shion? Anyways, the level of vulnerability that I do want to call out was very refreshing. So not just their their ability to really be firm in biblical truth, but always be open to having the conversation, but also being vulnerable with their own lives. And I mean, when you put all that together, it's like I think God really put us here for a reason. And I asked our kids, Chloe at the time, she's the oldest, so we asked her. We probably asked Noah too, but said, "What do you think about this group?" Right? Because I wanted her to also share in a lot of the experiences I had growing up in the church with the community with kids, and she said she liked it. It's kind of early, so it's like, okay, check. Let's give it a try. Yeah.
Nice.
It just felt like a church that we could grow in.
Yeah.
So again, going back to talking with Pastor Paul, when I described you as the artist and the creative, and Josh as the builder, I was trying. I think Pastor Paul was asking about you earlier on, and this was like right after the Home Builders Christmas banquet, and I said that. I said, "Oh, Caroline is like this, and Josh is like this," and then I went, Sangsib and I are like that too, and Danny and Diana are like that too, and so I went, "Oh, I am so glad they're part of our church." I feel like just the way that you guys is and already has been a huge blessing. I am so glad to have sat here and gotten to know you more. But I do have a final question, and it is, what makes you strong together, and what lessons do you hope to pass on to others?
I think it's that we're able to harness our differences in a way where they're more complementary of each other. And I think that there's a really good balance in our relationship. I think that we, in this season of our lives, have a much stronger understanding and appreciation of like what our strengths are, what our limitations are, and also kind of what our roles are as husband and wife. And I think we're just a little bit, we show up in those spaces with a little bit more conviction. And I said earlier that I think Josh does inspire me to want to be better because of the way that he lives his life, and is just going to his 100% every single day makes me want to show up with the same energy.
Yeah, there's a whole lot to say about each other. I think it's also important that during a difficult time, and especially something we prioritize now, is making sure that we're being fed by the word, fed by sermons, fed by messages and podcasts daily. Daily we do this, and it has been exceptionally fruitful for us. And so as much as we try our best, we're trying our best from what I would say is a foundation that has really been working like greatly for us. I mean, it's been building. I can't imagine our love for each other being more, but I'm rewarded by knowing that it probably will if we continue down this road, right? So I would give praise to,
God.
yeah, God.
Yeah.
Oh, and then the other half of the question, or did you want to?
No, I had a thought. I lost
Yeah.
my train of thought about being strong together. I think just part of it is like choosing to do that on purpose. We're just talking about being busy, right? And I think that, with 3 kids, it's very easy to get caught up in that daily grind. But I think it's just, we purposely try to make time and space to connect with each other, date each other, be with each other and not take each other for granted. And I think that, by living in a way that's not like a completely child-centric marriage, like we want to make sure that, after they grow up and move out, that we can look at each other and not sort of wonder like, who are we now? And so just feeding the marriage in all the different ways that you mentioned as well.
Yeah, and just building off of that, something that a lesson to pass on to others, something that we've heard, that I heard that I'd like to repeat, is you should ask yourself, especially for those with kids, do you want to repeat your marriage? Because your kids are watching you. They're gonna likely copy lots of the elements of your marriage, the way the husband and your spouse work together. So if you're concentrating on the kids, is that what you want, right? So
Want your kids to be repeating.
yes, exactly, right. Or other issues, right? So
Oh, that's deep. But yeah, I'm so encouraged once again. I am reminded, we're going through Tim Keller's. I don't know if you've heard of Tim Keller and Kathy Keller's book, the Meaning of Marriage. We're going through that with another couple, and there was a chapter that talks about how there's no way that you can kind of do the horizontal without the vertical.
Yes.
And so
Exactly.
the whole concept of feeding your marriage. And I hope that this is just taken in by everyone that's listening. And even for those that aren't married, these are just wonderful lessons and stories and examples. And like right in front of me, like the example that you guys gave as a couple. And yeah, thank you guys so much for being a part of this today.
Thank you for doing
Thank you
this.
for having us.
Yeah, thank
Nice.
you.
As we come to the end of this episode of Living Stones, we hope that you've been encouraged and blessed by this incredible story of Caroline and Josh and all the things that they had to share about marriage. If you found value in today's episode, we encourage you to share it with others. Remember that you are not alone in this journey. We are members of God's household, united by our shared faith in the Lord and the desire to grow together. So until next time, may God's grace and peace be with you all.